The pain hit like a freight train, deep, rolling, unrelenting. I gripped the rails of the hospital bed, knuckles white, breath ragged. My body was betraying me, or so it felt, as another contraction ripped through me. I was alone. No hand to hold. No voice to soothe me. Owen had called 3 hours earlier, emergency board meeting. I'll be there as soon as I can. But as the clock ticked past 11 p.m. and my water broke in a cold rush, I knew he wasn't coming. Then, during a brief lull between surges, my phone, left charging on the bedside table, lit up with a message from an unknown number. A photo. Owen, barefoot in a plush hotel suite, arm around his assistant Lila, her small but unmistakably pregnant belly glowing under soft light. They were holding a sonogram labeled Baby Ryan, due May 14th. My heart stilled. May. She was barely 2 months along. He hadn't just left me. He'd already begun again. The world tilted. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just stared, numb, as the next contraction swallowed me whole. The man I'd built a life with had already replaced us. In that moment, I stopped waiting for him. I stopped believing in us. I stopped being his wife. I became something sharper, quieter, stronger. My name is Narissa Elwood. I'm 40 years old, a business consultant, and the founder of Elwood Strategic Advisors. For 12 years, I built a life with Owen Hartwell, a man who mastered charm but never learned loyalty. Ginevra entered the world at 3:17 a.m., 7 pounds, 1 ounce, with a cry so fierce it made the nurses laugh. They placed her on my chest, red-faced and squirming, her tiny fingers gripping my skin like she knew I was all she had. I kissed her forehead and whispered her name, Ginevra, after my grandmother, a woman who survived betrayal and built a legacy alone. A nurse asked where Owen was. He's tied up with work, I said, voice calm, though my chest ached. In my mind, I logged it, first documented abandonment during active labor and delivery. I held Ginevra tighter, memorizing the weight of her, the smell of her, the way her eyes fluttered open like she was already searching for me. No one else mattered. Not the empty chair by my bed. Not the man who'd rather be with another woman carrying his second child. I made a silent vow. She would never feel secondary. Never feel replaceable. Never doubt she was enough. As dawn broke through the blinds, I traced her cheek and thought, this is where my real life begins. Everything before, marriage, compromise, waiting, was just scaffolding. Now I'd build something true, something unshakable, something he could never claim. 12 hours after Ginevra was born, Owen walked in like he owned the room, crisp shirt, cologne, red roses in hand. Sorry I missed it, he said, kissing my forehead. Flight from Denver got grounded. Total mess. I nodded, too tired to argue. But the moment he turned to fuss over the flowers, I pulled out my phone and checked flight stats. 0 delays from Denver International that night. Not one cancellation. My stomach dropped, then hardened. He hadn't even tried to lie well. While he chatted with the nurse about how proud he was, I opened my notes app under the blanket and typed, Owen claims flight delay on November 3rd. Verified as false via FAA public records. Recorded as intentional deception. Evidence timeline. He never noticed. He never saw me watching his every shift, every fake smile, every rehearsed line. Men like him assume silence means surrender. But my silence was inventory. I was cataloging his betrayals like assets, each one a brick in the wall I'd build between him and my daughter. When he finally leaned over to meet Ginevra, I didn't flinch. I just watched his eyes. They didn't light up with wonder. They flickered with guilt. And that told me everything. The game was already over. He just didn't know he'd lost. The next afternoon, during visiting hours, Owen reached for Ginevra like it was his right. Let me hold her, he said, already stepping closer. I shifted her to my left arm, out of reach. You don't get to touch her until you tell me the truth. He froze, then let out a nervous laugh. What truth? His voice was too light, too quick. He glanced at the door like he wanted an audience, or an escape. I held his gaze. The truth about the photo. About Lila. About the sonogram dated May 14th. His face went pale. He stammered, "I don't know what you're talking about." But his hands tightened around the roses. That's when I knew. He thought I'd never see it, that I'd never connect the dots. He still believed I was the woman who waited at home, trusting blindly. But I wasn't her anymore. I didn't raise my voice, didn't cry. I just looked at him, really looked, and said, "You chose her over us while I was in labor. Don't pretend you deserve to hold her now." He stepped back, stunned. Good. Let him feel the weight of what he'd thrown away. Because from this moment on, access to Ginevra wouldn't be granted, it would have to be earned. And he'd already failed the first test. 2 days after giving birth, sore and exhausted but wired with adrenaline, I got another text from the same unknown number. This time it was a receipt. The Bloom Room, gender reveal party, $420, guest of honor, Lila Hartwell. Date, October 29th. Just a few days behind my due date. My hand shook, not from fear, but from cold, sharp focus. I Googled the venue, found photos on their Instagram. Owen in a navy blazer, one hand on Lila's swollen belly, the other holding a blue balloon. Caption, Team Ryan is ready. I scrolled in silence, each image another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Then, a strange calm washed over me. I opened my laptop, logged into my secure drive, and created a new folder. Hartwell versus Elwood case files. I dropped in the sonogram photo, the receipt, screenshots of his false flight claim, and a timeline of all suspicious charges from the past year. This wasn't revenge. It was protection. Ginevra deserved a life free from lies, from men who discard women when something newer appears. And I, detail-oriented, strategic, prepared, would make sure she got it. I closed the laptop, looked at my sleeping daughter, and whispered, "No one touches you again." The foundation was laid. Now I'd build a fortress. I was discharged on day 2, legs still weak, arms full of my newborn. Owen waited by the hospital entrance, keys in hand. "I'll drive you home," he said, voice smooth, like nothing had happened. I smiled politely and stepped past him to the curb, where a pre-booked town car idled. "Thanks, but I've got it," I said, sliding in with Ginevra. I paid with my personal credit card, the one tied only to my consulting business, never our joint accounts. At home, I changed every lock while Ginevra napped in her carrier. Reset all Wi-Fi and security passwords. Then I logged into our joint savings and transferred $20,000 to my emergency fund, just enough to seem routine, not suspicious. I'd been moving small amounts for months, always after his business trips. That night, as Ginevra slept curled against my chest, I reviewed the transfer confirmation. Clean, quiet, legal. Owen called at 9 p.m., furious. "You locked me out?" I kept my voice calm. "The house is in my name, Owen. Always has been. Inherited from my grandmother." He scoffed. "You're overreacting." I didn't argue. I just took a screenshot of his message. Admission of ignorance equals proof of non-investment in marital assets. Another brick in the wall. Another step toward freedom. He called again that night, voice sharp with panic. "You can't just shut me out of my own home." I sat in the nursery, rocking Ginevra, moonlight casting soft shadows on the walls. "It's not your home," I said evenly. "The deed lists only my name. You never asked to be added. Never cared enough to check." Silence. Then, "You're being dramatic." I almost laughed. Dramatic? While I labored alone, he was celebrating another woman's pregnancy. I took a screenshot of his text, "You're overreacting." Filed it under evidence, dismissal of maternal distress. Later, I pulled up the property records on my laptop, deed dated 2019, sole ownership, no liens, no joint claims. My grandmother had been betrayed too. She taught me early. Never let a man hold the keys to your castle. Owen assumed marriage meant automatic access, but I'd built this life alone long before him, and I'd protect it long after. Ginevra stirred in her sleep, tiny fist clenching. I kissed her forehead. "No one takes this from us," I whispered. "Not him. Not his lies. Not his sense of entitlement. This house was our sanctuary, and from now on, only those who earned trust would cross its threshold." At 3 a.m., Ginevra woke hungry. As I nursed her in the dim glow of the nursery lamp, I opened my laptop and pulled up a year of joint credit card statements. I'd been quietly reviewing them for months, noting odd charges, but now I went deeper. Hotel stays in Chicago, Dallas, Miami, all booked during his client offsites. Each matched a weekend I'd spent alone, telling friends he was swamped with work. Then, gift cards to Lux and Bloom, Lila's favorite boutique. A $200 spa package for L. Hartwell. And one entry that made my blood run cold. Pregnancy test, September 4th. I was 28 weeks pregnant then, swollen and exhausted, planning our nursery. He was buying tests for another woman. I compiled every charge into a spreadsheet, dates, amounts, locations, then cross-referenced them with his travel logs. Every discrepancy was a confession. Every receipt a betrayal. By 5 a.m., I had a 14-page document titled Financial Infidelity Log, 2024. Ginevra fell asleep at my breast, peaceful. I closed the laptop. This wasn't just about money. It was about priority. He'd chosen them over us again and again. At this point, the paper trail would speak louder than any plea. And when the time came, it would bury him. 3 days after we got home, my phone buzzed with a text from Lila. I didn't know you were in labor. Owen told me you two were separated. I didn't reply. But an hour later, another message. He said you didn't care about him anymore. Then, I'm so sorry. I thought it was real. I stayed silent. And that silence worked. She kept talking, sent screenshots of their texts, hotel bookings, even a voice note where Owen said, Narissa's too focused on work to notice. She's basically married to her laptop. I saved everything, photos, audio, timestamps, into a subfolder labeled Lila Testimony. Then, I blocked her number. My case was no longer just suspicion. It was evidence. Ironclad. Corroborated. That afternoon, I called my lawyer, Mara. I have everything, I said. She paused. Even motive? Better, I replied. I have his own words admitting he believed I wouldn't notice. Mara exhaled. That's gold. I looked at Ginevra in her bassinet, sunlight catching her eyelashes. I hadn't set a trap. I'd simply refused to look away. And in doing so, I'd given my daughter the greatest gift, a future free from his lies. I'd make sure he never got close enough to poison it. Ginevra was 6 days old when I signed the divorce papers in my home office. She slept peacefully in her bassinet, wrapped in the cream blanket my grandmother knitted. My lawyer had drafted the petition with surgical precision. Grounds included emotional abandonment during childbirth, financial infidelity, and moral unfitness due to concurrent pregnancy with another woman. I requested sole legal and physical custody, full protection of separate assets, and, most critically, termination of paternal rights based on demonstrated disregard for maternal and infant welfare. Mara warned me it was aggressive. He'll fight it, she said. I shook my head. He won't, because he knows he's guilty. I signed my name with a steady hand. This wasn't anger. It was architecture. I was designing a life where Ginevra would never question her worth or her safety. Owen had shown his true character in a hotel room while I screamed through contractions alone. Now the courts would see it too. I sealed the envelope, placed it beside Ginevra's tiny hand, and whispered, Your first shield, my love. The system would move slowly, but I had already won. Because from this moment on, he existed only in the past, and she, only in the future I'd build for her. Within a week, Owen began his campaign. He called our closest friends, spinning a story about my postpartum instability and unreasonable rage. He claimed I was denying him access to his daughter out of spite. One afternoon, Maya, my college roommate, called in tears. Narissa, please. Just let him see Ginevra. He's heartbroken. I listened quietly, then opened my photo gallery and sent her the sonogram image. Owen and Lila, smiling over baby Ryan, due May 14th. Maya went silent. When she spoke again, her voice was hollow. He told me you two were separated, that you didn't want him around. He lied, I said. Just like he lied about being in Denver. Just like he lied about loving me. She apologized, sobbing. I didn't comfort her. I said, Don't ever ask me to be reasonable about betrayal again. After we hung up, I added her call log to my case file under witness recantation. Owen thought social pressure would crack me, but every person he manipulated only confirmed his pattern. Charm as a weapon, truth as an obstacle. By the time Ginevra smiled for the first time, 3 days later, I'd lost 2 friends and gained 2 more pieces of evidence. Good. Let him be alone. He chose it. And now, the world was seeing him clearly through my eyes. 10 days after filing, Owen tried to transfer $15,000 from our joint savings to cover legal fees. I'd already frozen the account the night I left the hospital, designating myself as the sole authorized user for withdrawals over $5,000, a clause buried in the fine print he never read. The bank flagged the transaction and called me immediately. Mr. Hartwell attempted a large transfer, the rep said. We've declined it per your security protocol. I thanked her and waited. 3 days passed. Then Owen texted, why was my transfer denied? I didn't reply right away. Let him stew. Let him panic. On the 4th morning, I sent one line, try the hotel credit cards. His response was instant. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded the bank alert, his text, and my reply to Mara. He's scrambling, she said. Perfect. That afternoon, I reviewed our account history. He'd made 3 small transfers in the past month, $1,200 here, $800 there, likely to fund Lila's expenses. Now, with the account frozen, he was exposed. Broke. Desperate. And every misstep he made only tightened the noose. I rocked Ginevra and whispered he thought our money was his escape route. But it's our fortress, and fortresses don't fall to men who never built them. 2 weeks after Ginevra's birth, I drove to the County Vital Records office. She slept in her car seat, wrapped in a soft blanket. The clerk greeted me warmly. Here for the birth certificate? I nodded. She handed me a form. Under father's name, I wrote, not applicable. She hesitated. Are you sure? We usually require both parents' information. I'm sure, I said, and slid over my divorce filing receipt and a printed copy of the text I received during labor. Owen in a hotel suite with his pregnant assistant, dated the same day Ginevra was born. He wasn't present for the birth, I added quietly. He didn't call. He didn't ask if I was okay. He chose someone else while I was alone in that delivery room. The clerk studied the photo, then my face, tired, resolute, holding my daughter's car seat like a lifeline. She didn't ask for more. She processed the form as submitted. Legally, Owen Hartwell did not exist as Ginevra's father. No name, no rights, no claim. When I walked out, sunlight warm on my shoulders, I felt lighter than I had in years. That night, I framed the certificate and hung it in Ginevra's nursery. Not as a statement, but as a shield. From now on, every school form, every doctor's visit, every legal document would reflect the truth. She belonged to me. Only me. Owen had made his choice in a hotel room. Now, the state honored the consequences. 3 weeks postpartum, I returned to my office for a half day. Ginevra stayed with my nanny. I was reviewing client contracts when my receptionist buzzed in. Mr. Hartwell is here. Says he just wants to see his daughter. My blood ran cold. I walked to the window and saw him in the lobby, holding flowers, wearing the suit he wore on our wedding day. He was trying to weaponize nostalgia. I called security. Terrell, a former MP I'd hired after my last business partner tried to steal IP. He's not on the approved list, I said. Escort him off the property. No discussion. I watched from above as Terrell approached, calm but firm. Owen protested, voice rising. Terrell placed a hand on his shoulder and guided him to the door. I snapped a photo, clear, time-stamped in daylight. Trespassing documented. That evening, I added it to my file under pattern of boundary violation. Owen thought showing up uninvited was romantic. But it wasn't love, it was entitlement. And entitlement has no place near my child. Later, as I nursed Ginevra, I thought, he still doesn't understand. This isn't a negotiation. It's a verdict. And I was the judge, jury, and architect of her safety. The next day, Owen posted on Instagram, A blurry photo of Ginevra's hospital wristband. He must have taken it during his one visit. Captioned, "Some people weaponize motherhood to punish love." Vague. Dramatic. Classic deflection. I screenshotted it immediately. Within hours, Lila's younger sister commented, "You told me Narissa didn't care about you. But you cried when she gave birth, said you messed everything up." The internet erupted. Someone dug up Lila's baby shower photos. Others tagged my firm's page. I didn't engage, but I saved everything, every comment, every share, every deleted reply from Owen. Added it all to Exhibit D. Public admission of remorse and deception. Mara called, laughing, "This is better than depositions." I looked at Ginevra, asleep in my arms, and felt no joy, only resolve. Owen wanted a narrative. Fine. But the truth was louder. And now it had witnesses. His attempt to paint me as cruel had backfired spectacularly. Instead of sympathy, he got exposure. And in our world, reputation is currency. His was bankrupt. I closed the app, kissed Ginevra's forehead, and whispered, "Let him talk." Every word digs his grave deeper. The custody mediation session was held in a sterile conference room downtown. Owen arrived in a tailored suit, smiling like this was just a formality. "I just want to be involved in my child's life," he told the mediator, voice smooth. She nodded, then turned to me. "And you're seeking sole custody?" "Yes," I said. She glanced at Owen. "Mr. Hartwell, where were you during Miss Elwood's labor and delivery?" He shifted. "Work emergency. I got there the next day. The hospital logs show you never checked in," she said. "And Miss Elwood received this during active labor." I slid a folder across the table. The sonogram photo of Owen and Lila. Timestamped the morning Ginevra was born, his false flight records, and a log of his first post-birth text. "Is it a boy or a girl?" "No, how are you?" "No, are you okay?" Just a question about the product, not the person. The mediator read in silence. Then she closed her notebook. Looked at Owen. "You abandoned your wife during one of the most vulnerable moments of her life for another pregnant woman. That's not a lapse, it's a pattern." She turned to me. "Your request for sole custody is reasonable." Owen's face fell. I didn't gloat. I gathered my papers and walked out. Ginevra was waiting at home, cooing in her bouncer. I picked her up and held her close. He'd gambled our family on a lie. Now he'd lose everything, including the right to call her his. 2 days after mediation, Mara called with unexpected news. Lila had filed a harassment report against Owen. After I blocked her, he bombarded her with texts, blaming her for ruining everything, calling her a gold digger who trapped him. She'd saved them all. Filed a police report. Mara had obtained a copy through a records request. "Now he's got 2 women documenting his pattern," she said. "This is gold for moral unfitness." I added the report to my file. Third-party corroboration of blame shifting, emotional manipulation, and post-betrayal aggression. That evening, as I bathed Ginevra, I thought about Lila. She wasn't innocent, but she was collateral damage in Owen's war on accountability. Still, her testimony sealed his fate. In court, he looked like a man who couldn't own his choices, only shift them onto women. I dressed Ginevra in her softest pajamas, kissed her damp curls, and whispered, "You'll never be a scapegoat, my love." Owen thought silence meant weakness, but my silence was strategy. And now, even his mistress had turned witness. His web was unraveling, and every thread led back to him. The Porsche, a silver 911 he begged for on our 10th anniversary, was still in my name. He'd forgotten to transfer the title. I listed it online with a broker I trusted. Sold it in 48 hours for $85,000. I deposited every penny into Ginevra's newly opened education trust, irrevocable, protected, and solely in her name. Then, I emailed Owen the bill of sale with a note. Consider it child support from a man who never showed up. He called within the hour, voice shaking. "You can't just sell my car." "It was never yours," I said. "Check the title." Silence. Then a week. "You're punishing me." "No," I replied. "I'm protecting her." I hung up before he could plead. That night, I reviewed the trust documents with Mara. "He can't touch it," she confirmed. "Not even in bankruptcy." I smiled for the first time in weeks. This wasn't revenge. It was redirection. His vanity had funded my daughter's future. And every time Ginevra walks across a graduation stage, she'll do it on the ashes of his selfishness. I tucked her in, whispered, "Your first scholarship is already paid for," and turned out the light. Owen's parents called on a rainy Tuesday. His mother sobbed, "We just want to hold our granddaughter. Please, Nerissa." I held Ginevra closer. "Then hold your son accountable. He's devastated," his father said. "He made a mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated. "He abandoned us during childbirth for another pregnant woman. That's not a mistake, it's a choice." They fell silent. Then his mother whispered, "We didn't raise him to be like this." "Maybe not," I said. "But you excused him when he was selfish. You praised his ambition when he ignored me. You never asked why I was always alone." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You raised a man who chose a hotel over a delivery room. Don't ask me to clean up your parenting." I ended the call. Blocked both numbers. Later, Ginevra babbled in her playpen, reaching for a blue rattle. I handed it to her. "You deserve grandparents who choose you," I said. "Not ones who choose excuses." And that was that. Their grief was not my burden. Their regret was not my redemption. The final hearing lasted 3 hours. Owen wore a navy suit, hair slicked back, trying to look composed. But his hands trembled when the judge asked about the sonogram. I sat quietly as Mara presented the evidence. The photos, the texts, the financial log, Lila's police report, the birth certificate with no father listed. The judge listened, face unreadable. Then she spoke. "Mr. Hartwell, you don't get to skip the hard parts of fatherhood and demand the joyful ones." She granted me sole legal and physical custody. Owen, supervised visits only if he completed parenting classes, therapy, and anger management. He never enrolled. After the gavel fell, I walked out without looking back. Owen shouted my name in the hallway. I kept walking. Ginevra was waiting at home, teething and fussy. I held her close, breathing in her milky scent. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was quiet, clean, and absolute. He had gambled our family on a lie. And now he'd lost everything, including the right to call her his daughter. Ginevra turned 3 months old on a crisp February morning. She laughed for the first time that day, a bright, bubbling sound that filled the house like sunlight. I made her a tiny cake, took a dozen photos, and then opened my laptop. I compiled the final documents, the signed divorce decree, the custody order naming me sole legal guardian, and a scanned copy of Ginevra's birth certificate, clean, official, and bearing no father's name. I attached them to an email, typed Owen's address, and set the subject line, "Congratulations. You're officially irrelevant." I hit send before I could second guess it. Within minutes, my phone buzzed. A string of frantic texts. "What is this?" "You can't erase me. She's my daughter too." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The law had spoken. The documents were sealed. The truth was recorded. That afternoon, I took Ginevra to the park. As she batted at fallen leaves, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of certainty. Owen could rage, beg, or rewrite history in his head. But in the real world, the one I built, Ginevra belonged to me. And that was final. 2 weeks later, I took Ginevra to her 4-month pediatric checkup. As I filled out forms in the waiting room, I looked up and saw him. Owen, sitting 3 chairs down, pretending to scroll on his phone. My blood turned to ice. When the nurse called my name, he stood too. "I just happened to be nearby," he said, stepping closer. I thought maybe I could say hello. I didn't speak. I handed Ginevra to the nurse, then walked to the front desk. "That man is not on my approved contact list," I said, voice low but firm. "He has no legal right to be near my daughter." The receptionist paged security. Within minutes, Owen was escorted out, red-faced and sputtering. I filed for a restraining order that afternoon. The judge granted it the next day, 500-foot exclusion zone around Ginevra at all times. Violation meant immediate arrest. That night, I double-checked the locks, kissed Ginevra's forehead, and whispered, "No one gets close without earning it." He tried to sneak back in, like a ghost haunting a life he forfeited. But I wasn't afraid of ghosts. I built walls for a reason. By spring, Owen's career had crumbled. His firm received a copy of Lila's harassment report through a background check for a promotion. They called it a severe lapse in judgment. He was let go with a quiet severance. He tried launching a solo consulting practice, but no one hired him. In our tight-knit industry, word spread fast. He abandoned his wife in labor for another pregnant woman. Got erased from his child's birth certificate. I heard it at conferences, over coffee in hushed tones. No one condemned me. They called me brave, smart. A warning to every man who thinks loyalty is optional. Owen's LinkedIn profile went silent. His office lease expired. His Porsche was gone. All that remained was a man who'd gambled his reputation on a lie and lost everything. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. His downfall wasn't my doing. It was the natural consequence of a life built on sand. And while he searched for scraps of dignity, I signed a new client, expanded my team, and kissed Ginevra goodnight in a house that was wholly, irrevocably mine. 1 year after Ginevra's birth, I ran into Owen's cousin at a cafe in Portland. She recognized me immediately. He's living in his sister's basement, she said, voice low. Broke. Depressed. Still texting you, I hear. I stir my tea, calm. He's obsessed with getting his daughter back. I didn't flinch. She's not his, I said. She never was. The cousin nodded, eyes sad. He still doesn't get it, does he? No, I replied. And he never will. I paid for my coffee, left a generous tip, and walked out into the sunlight. Ginevra was at home with her nanny, babbling her first words. Later that evening, I framed a photo of her laughing, mouth wide, eyes bright, and hung it in my office. Below it, I placed Owen's final text. I deserve to be a father. No reply, no argument, just a quiet declaration of what should have been obvious. Deserving isn't enough. Showing up is. And he never did. Ginevra's first birthday was a quiet affair. Just her, my two closest friends, and a cake shaped like a blueprint, complete with edible pencils and tiny drafting tools. No suits, no speeches, no men who thought love was optional. After the cake, I stepped onto the back patio, where a small fire pit waited. I pulled Owen's wedding ring from my jewelry box, tarnished, cold, meaningless, and tossed it into the flames. It blackened, then vanished. I posted nothing online. This wasn't for show. It was for us. That night, after Ginevra fell asleep, I opened my office drawer labeled Mistakes I Never Made Twice. Inside, I placed his final text. Then I closed it for good. I built a life he can't touch, a legacy of strength, foresight, and fierce, quiet love. And as I stood in the moonlight listening to my daughter's steady breaths, I knew this wasn't an ending. It was the foundation of everything that comes next.